Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Prime Minister following our lead on children accessing social media? In particular, can I thank the Shadow Education Secretary, 61 Labour MPs and the Greater Manchester Mayor for forcing him to think again. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and I agree. The future of Greenland should only be decided by the people of Greenland. When the Prime Minister made this point to President Trump on Monday, did the President agree or disagree?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, engaging constructively on international security matters hugely, particularly when it comes to security in the Arctic, and that's the context in which this discussion is going on in relation to Greenland. As we engage constructively, I have made my position clear on our principles and values. The first of those is that the future of Greenland is for the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
Imagine, if you will, being the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, standing at the dispatch box and having to explain to the British public why you are currently in a long-distance relationship dispute with Donald Trump over a giant block of ice and a handful of islands in the Indian Ocean. It is January 2026, and Keir Starmer has just had a week that would make a soap opera writer say, "No, that is a bit too much. Let us tone it down." Between Trump calling British foreign policy an act of great stupidity and Kemi Badenoch turning Prime Minister's questions into a legal cross-examination that left Sir Keir looking like he had forgotten how to use vowels, the government is in a bit of a pickle. We're talking about the Greenland Gambit, the Chagos chaos, and a Prime Minister who seems to be buffering in real time. This is not just a bad day at the office, it is a full-blown diplomatic meltdown on live television. Quick favour, if you are loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers have not yet. It is free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. Let us set the scene. It is Wednesday, the 21st of January 2026. The air in the House of Commons is thick with the scent of high-stakes political theatre and perhaps a hint of desperation from the Treasury bench. Enter Kemi Badenoch. Now, regardless of your thoughts on the Conservative leader, you have to admit she has a knack for finding the exact loose thread on Starmer's suit and pulling it until the whole jacket falls off. She opened the session with a question that sounded simple enough. Greenland. Yes, Greenland. Because in 2026, the world's largest island has become the hottest piece of real estate on the planet, and Donald Trump wants to put a for sale sign on it. Badenoch quizzed the Prime Minister on his conversation with President Trump earlier in the week. She noted that both she and Starmer agree that the future of Greenland should be decided by the people of Greenland. When the Prime Minister made this point to President Trump on Monday, she asked, with a smile that suggested she already knew the answer, did the President agree or disagree? Cue the silence. A silence so loud you could hear the ghost of Margaret Thatcher sharpening her handbag. Sir Keir Starmer paused. He adjusted his papers. He looked at his red folder Lifebuoy. He seemed to be searching the ceiling for a script that had not been written yet. When he finally found his voice, it was vintage Starmer. Well, he began, engaging constructively on international security matters, hugely, particularly when it comes to security in the Arctic, and that's the context in which this discussion is going on, in relation to Greenland. Translation: he told me to go jump in a frozen lake, but I am trying to make it sound like a high-level strategic summit.
Mr. Speaker, we'll note that when I asked him what the President told him, he couldn't tell us. Now he expects us to believe he knows what's going on in President Trump's mind. Let me remind him, his Deputy Prime Minister, then Foreign Secretary, used to say that if President Trump didn't like the deal, it wouldn't go ahead. And let's look at what President Trump actually said. The Chagos deal is an act of great stupidity and a sign of total weakness. We didn't need President Trump to tell us that. We've been saying this for 12 months.
Starmer went on to insist that Britain will not yield on its principles regarding Greenland. It was a bold statement, but it lacked the punch of a man who actually had the upper hand. He was essentially telling a hurricane to be a bit more pragmatic. When you are facing a president who treats international treaties like napkins at a steakhouse saying you will not yield, while your economy is staring down the barrel of a 25% tariff, is a bit like a mouse threatening to bite an elephant's toe. But Badenoch was just warming up. Once she had established that Starmer's constructive engagement with Trump was about as successful as a screen door on a submarine, she pivoted to the Chagos Islands. This is where things got really messy. For those who have not been following the saga, the UK government recently decided to cede the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, a move intended to provide a firm legal basis for the vital UK-US airbase on Diego Garcia. At the time, the US State Department under Marco Rubio gave it the thumbs up. Even Trump, in a rare moment of early 2025 restraint, seemed to think it was monumental. Fast forward to late January 2026, and Donald Trump has had a change of heart. And by change of heart, I mean he went on Truth Social and described the deal as an act of great stupidity and a sign of total weakness. He even linked it to Greenland, suggesting that if the UK is giving away territory for no reason whatsoever, then the US should certainly be allowed to acquire some of its own. Badenoch smelled blood. She challenged Starmer on this sudden reversal. How can the Prime Minister claim he is protecting national security when his most important ally is calling his flagship security deal stupid? Starmer's defence was that Trump's words were expressly intended to put pressure on him to yield over Greenland. He accused Badenoch of jumping on the bandwagon and naked opportunism. It was an angry exchange. Starmer was visibly frustrated, claiming that Trump's comments on Chagos were literally in the same sentence as his threats over Greenland. He was trying to frame it as a bullying tactic that the UK must resist. But the problem for Keir is the double U, the U-turn and the underperformance. If you tell the public a deal is secure because Washington likes it, and then Washington starts calling it weak, you look less like a master diplomat and more like the person who bought a Gucci bag on holiday, only to realise the G is a C.
I've already told him we agree on Greenland. I'm asking about the Chagos deal. That money, that £35 billion, should go to the armed forces. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing. We are in a very different place, the most dangerous international environment since the end of the Cold War. Last week, the head of the armed forces, not me, the head of the armed forces warned that our military faces a £28 billion shortfall. Is he right?
While this was all kicking off in Westminster, the imperial president himself was in Davos, doing what he does best, making everyone else feel incredibly uncomfortable. At the World Economic Forum, Trump ramped up his rhetoric, attacking European leaders and doubling down on his Greenland or bust policy. Nigel Farage, also in Davos, added fuel to the fire by stating that the world would be a better, more secure place if America took over Greenland. This puts Starmer in an impossible position. He is trying to hold a united front in Parliament, but the Reform UK leader is essentially acting as a cheerleader for the man threatening the UK with trade tariffs. Starmer's softly approach to Trump, the idea that we can cajole and flatter him into being reasonable, has effectively blown up. In the House of Commons, Starmer admitted as much, hardening his tone and stating that applying tariffs on allies is completely wrong. It is the first time he has truly called out Trump in such a forceful manner. But is it too little, too late? The Prime Minister is scheduled to host Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen on Thursday to discuss a collective response to the Greenland crisis. It is a bit like two people in a lifeboat trying to decide how to handle a hungry shark. They have the moral high ground, but the shark has the teeth. And the teeth, in this instance, are 10 to 25% tariffs that would devastate British exports at a time when inflation is already ticking back up to 3. What really stuck with viewers of this PMQ session, however, was the optics. We often talk about the theatre of politics, and this was a tragedy in one act. Starmer, the former director of public prosecutions, the man who built his career on forensic questioning, was the one being cross-examined, and he did not like it. When Badenoch asked about the Chagos/Greenland link, Starmer's buffering was palpable. He looked like a man whose teleprompter had just glitched in the middle of a live broadcast. He kept returning to the phrase values and principles, using it as a sort of verbal security blanket. But as the Tories shouted from the benches, values do not pay the bills and principles do not stop tariffs, Badenoch's critique that Starmer doesn't know what his policy is and that the whole thing is a farce is starting to resonate. When you have a Prime Minister who seems more comfortable flying to international summits than standing at the dispatch box, the public starts to wonder if anyone is actually minding the shop at home. The nightmare leaks from the Treasury only add to the sense of a government under siege. If the Chancellor is fighting inflation and the Prime Minister is fighting the President of the United States, who is fighting for the British taxpayer?
Unfortunately for the Prime Minister, Donald Trump is right on the Chagos deal. This is surrendering British territory with a strategic military base on it for no reason whatsoever. It weakens our country. It is not in the national interest. It is a good deal for China and Russia. And the worst part is we're paying £35 billion of reparations to give away territory which we bought in the 1960s. That is wrong. President Trump has made some decisions which I agree with and others which I disagree with. What matters is what is in the British national interest. If President Trump does something that is great for us in the UK, I will agree. If he does things which are not good for the UK, I will disagree. But the most important thing is British national interest.
As we look toward the end of January 2026, the year of turning a corner is looking more like the year of living dangerously. Keir Starmer might insist he is not yielding, but in the high-stakes game of international poker, you eventually have to show your hand. And right now it looks like Sir Keir is holding a pair of twos, while Trump is sitting on a full house of tariffs. The mockery in Parliament was not just about Greenland or Chagos, it was about the perception of leadership. A Prime Minister who loses his ability to speak when challenged by the opposition is a Prime Minister who is losing his grip on the narrative. And in British politics, once you lose the narrative, the exit door starts looking very inviting. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you in the next one.